It's time for This Week Live, Your Voice, Your Vote 2024. Welcome to This Week Live. This show is a pilot, something of an experiment. The idea here is to look at the week in politics here on ABC News Live. I'm Jonathan Karl. Thank you for streaming with us. For tens of millions of Americans, Election Day is already here. November 5th, the final day of voting, is just 11 days away. But we're going to be talking to top election officials in the battleground states, taking a look at the early vote, a new ABC News Ipsos poll, and more to try to figure out where this race stands and where it is going. Rick Klein is here with me in the studio with the latest numbers. You're also going to hear from Liz Cheney, from Mark Cuban, Reince Priebus, and from an independent candidate in Nebraska who is shaking up the battle for control of the Senate. Rachel Scott and Mary Bruce will have the latest from the campaign trail, and we begin right there with our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, live from Georgia. Mary.
Hey, John. Yeah, 11 days to go, and Kamala Harris is crisscrossing the key battleground states, ramping up her attacks against Donald Trump, really escalating her argument that he's a danger to democracy and leaning on her biggest celebrity supporters to help drive voters to the polls. Everyone from the boss to former President Barack Obama, who overnight here in Georgia, before a crowd of 23,000, they made their first appearance on the trail together. And Obama really painted Donald Trump as a power-hungry leader who's only out for himself, taking him to task on the economy and health care, and urging voters not to be fooled by all of Donald Trump's tough talk. Harris last night promising to put the American people first, saying Trump's priority will be revenge and retribution, while she will be trying to tick through her priority list for the American people. Now, today, Harris travels down to Houston, Texas. Certainly not a key battleground state, but it is, Harris argues, ground zero for the fight over abortion rights. And there she's going to highlight the stories of several women who have been negatively impacted by the state's severe restrictions, as Harris continues to argue that Donald Trump is to blame for the tough bans that we have seen sweeping across the country. And once again tonight, she's going to be leaning into some star power after all of that speculation at the Democratic convention. Will she or won't we, John? Tonight is the night. The Queen, Beyonce, will be appearing side by side there performing with Kamala Harris at her rally in her hometown of Houston. John, I know you're a fan.
Oh, you know it, Mary. Texas Hold'em, all right? All right, we're here in the studio with Rick Klein. You're our political director. You're our Washington bureau chief. You're our guru. So, Rick, I've got a lot I want to catch up with you on. First of all, the early vote. We have millions of voters have already cast. Can you tell us exactly who they are and who they've voted for?
Yeah, good. We have another hour to get into all of that. Look,
but what can we discern? What can we learn from all this early vote? First of all, there's a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about tens of millions of Americans, and the number of early voters is escalating as we get closer, because now it is available in just about every state, and people are partaking of it. The pace overall is not up to where it was 4 years ago, but we do have almost 35 million Americans already having voted, according to the University of Florida, which tracks this. Now, the reason the pace is down is obviously 2020 was the COVID year. A lot of people voted early and by mail. That said, we are seeing some records set early on in some of the in-person voting, and it is striking to see how many people are partaking of the opportunity.
Okay, so let's look at the battleground states, the states that are going to decide who wins this race. Can you learn anything? Nevada's had a lot of early vote, and I'm getting a sense that Republicans like what they see out there.
Yeah, and look, you have to offer this with a big caveat that we know a lot about who the people are that are voting. We don't know who they're voting for. And there's a blind spot.
We know their party registration.
That's right. We know their party registration or their likely party leaning. What we don't know necessarily is how independents are voting or whether they're definitely voting. But in Nevada, Democrats, as you can see, had a pretty big edge in early vote 4 years ago. That is erased and turned around right now. So what happened 4 years ago is in Nevada, you had Democrats basically building up a firewall before Election Day. That's gone now. The question is, are these just Election Day voters that are instead voting early? A little bit of a different situation in Pennsylvania, another big battleground. We've got some numbers on that. And in Pennsylvania, the Democrats aren't as much of a share as they were 4 years ago. But we're seeing maybe 400,000 vote advantage overall. Our parties at 538 been running the numbers. So that to me is really striking. You are seeing a firewall built up. No question people have changed the practice of voting, in part because Donald Trump has changed his tune, and in part because it's become more regular for people to vote early.
Yeah, so I kind of wonder, when we see more Republicans voting early, is it because 4 years ago Trump said it's a scam, don't do it? Now he's kind of saying two things. Trump is saying, vote early, but he's
Yeah.
also saying be careful because it's not really the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And Republicans are definitely listening to the message about voting early in a way that they didn't 4 years ago. Again, that was the COVID year, so things were a little off. The question that we won't know for until Election Day or after is, are these people that otherwise would be voting on Election Day instead of voting early, or are these people that are voting for the first time and showing the enthusiasm of voting early? Because right now, at least in a lot of the big states, you're just not seeing Democrats show up in the same kind of overwhelming numbers. They still have time to do that, but they're going to need a bigger election day than they did 4 years ago.
Okay, so just quickly, because we're going to be talking to the secretaries of state in both Michigan and in Georgia. What can you tell us about the early vote in those two states?
Yeah, what we've seen so far, and in Michigan, the in-person voting hasn't even begun yet, but in terms of people returning ballots by mail, we're seeing 56% of them Democrats. 4 years ago, it was 59%. So it's not a huge difference in Michigan, but again, very early there. Georgia, it is setting records for early in-person voting. More than 2.3 million people have already voted in the state of Georgia, and that was 4 years ago a 49-41 Democratic advantage. 8 points. That is now a 1-point disadvantage for Democrats. So again, Republicans voting much more than they did 4 years ago, voting early.
Fascinating. Okay, Rick, I got a lot more to talk to you about, but I got more to do in this show. So thank you. We'll have you back next time.
Yankees in 5. That's all I got.
Okay, all right, there you go. All right, Liz Cheney was out campaigning with Kamala Harris this week. It's a political odd couple that have come together in opposition to Donald Trump. After she was out campaigning with Harris in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, I caught up with Liz Cheney in Michigan, and I asked her not so much about Trump, we know where she stands there, but what does she think and what has she learned about Kamala Harris? Here's part of the conversation. I've known you for a long time, and I truly never thought I would see you running around with a Democratic presidential nominee throughout the battleground states. You've spent some real quality time with Kamala Harris. What's your sense of her?
When I had to make a decision about this race, I could have, and obviously was never, after January 6th, was never going to be in a position where I was supporting Donald Trump. I believe he's unfit and he's dangerous. But I made the decision beyond that to endorse Vice President Harris. And it is certainly the case that there are policies on which we disagree. But she is somebody who's devoted her life to public service. She is somebody who, even if you disagree with her, and maybe especially if you disagree with her, I can tell you she will listen. You know, when you all in business, when you think about what are you looking for in somebody you hire, you're looking for somebody that you can trust. You're looking for somebody who's going to be responsible, who's going to operate in good faith. You certainly wouldn't hire somebody who was unstable and erratic. And we need to think about this election in those terms. We're hiring somebody for the most important job really in the whole world. And I know that Vice President Harris is absolutely committed to governing in a way that reflects this coalition that has come together to support her. We've never seen anything like the coalition. I mean, it's, as you know, probably it stretches from Taylor Swift to Dick Cheney. And it's a broad coalition, but it is.
And you like both of them, Taylor Swift.
You know what?
And Dick Cheney.
I actually love both of them.
A lot of Republicans who share your concerns about Trump have said things very similar to what you have said over the past 3.5 years. Will say she's too far left. I can't support her. Some of those people have come around to supporting Trump. Some are simply saying they're going to write somebody else in.
And some,
yeah,
and I think many more than will say so publicly, will vote for Vice President Harris. And we could talk for hours about what's happened to the Republican Party and why more elected Republicans won't stand up and speak out. But the numbers the numbers of people who served with President Trump, who say never again, senior military officials and national security officials, his chief of staff, people who knew him best, Secretary of Defense, when they're telling all of us never again, we need to listen.
All right, Liz Cheney in Michigan just a few days ago in Detroit. I'm joined now by Chris Christie, the former governor, of course, of the great state of New Jersey, and a Mets fan, not a Yankees fan.
Yes.
So what do you make of Liz Cheney? You know her really well, and you share a lot of her views.
Look, I think she's taking
Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think she's taking what she considers to be her principled position and what she wants to do.
Is it going to matter? Is it going to make a difference?
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't. I think that folks like John Kelly and Mark Esper make a bigger difference because they work directly with the president. And I think the polling bears that out too, John, that voters, when they hear from someone who has worked directly with the president, which Liz Cheney never did, they take that more to heart than they do from Liz Cheney. And I believe that I've spoken to Liz. I believe that what she's saying is what she absolutely in her heart believes. And she's doing exactly what it is she wants to do. And I commend her for it.
Have you gone as far as, I mean, you're not going to vote for Donald Trump, obviously.
Definitely not.
But have you gone as far as she is? Are you going to vote for Kamala Harris?
I'm not voting for either of them at the moment, John.
At the moment?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've said publicly that I'm willing to be convinced by Vice President Harris that she deserves my vote, but she hasn't convinced me yet.
Let me ask you, she raised something, and I've heard from others. This is not just Liz Cheney. I've heard from others who say that there are voters out there that aren't saying it publicly, but they're going to go in, Republicans, but when they go in to vote, they're going to vote for Kamala Harris.
Look, I think
kind of a reverse of what we saw before when there were secret, hidden Trump voters.
That's what I was just going to say to you. I think that you hear a lot of commentators who keep talking about the hidden Trump vote.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any more hidden Trump vote.
No, they are out there.
They're out there. They're committed. They want people to know they're for Donald Trump. I think that there's a much greater likelihood that there are hidden Harris voters. That, back in 2016, it was embarrassing for a lot of people to say they were for Donald Trump. In 2024, I think in that same kind of cohort, there are people who now feel like it's embarrassing to say they're against him, that their friends will get all over them about it. And so now they just don't say it. But I think they may just go into the voting booth and go the other way. The risk for Harris is that there could be a section of those people who decide not to vote at all because she hasn't closed the deal with them. So I think the challenge for her in the last 10 days is to close the deal with disaffected Republicans and independents who don't want to vote for Trump and aren't going to vote for Trump. That's why I think Trump's vote, there's not a lot of movement there either way. He is kind of stuck where he is. The question is, will Harris elevate beyond him or will she drop beneath him?
This has been such an extraordinary week. I mean, it's hard to get surprised about anything with Donald Trump. But to see John Kelly come out and say on the record, on tape, that he thinks that Trump is a fascist, that he praised Adolf Hitler, that he called American heroes suckers and losers. And obviously, Kelly's not alone. No. I mean, why doesn't this make more of an impact on the race? Or is it? Is it having more of a hidden impact that we don't really realize?
I haven't seen it have an impact yet, John, but then again, it may be. I think part of the problem is that people already know this about him. I mean, the people who are really plugged in and willing to listen know that Donald Trump is a bad person. At core, use whatever other adjectives people want. Kelly used fascist. I'm not going to quibble with him about any of that. But what I would say to you is that I don't think that moves votes anymore. I think the votes that are moved by that have been moved. That's why my point is Harris has the opportunity to win because she can still move people into her column. You can't move people away from Trump who are now with him because of what John Kelly said.
Well, one of the people that I think has been very interesting with her on the campaign trail, in a way, Liz Cheney is certainly interesting out there, but has been Mark Cuban, somebody who in the past had praised Trump, had been friendly with Trump, had said suggested he was even supporting him in 2015. I asked him about Kamala Harris because he too has spent a lot of time. He's going to join us on This Week on Sunday, but here's a little preview of that conversation.
Kamala is a leader. I think Kamala has the ability to assimilate people into what she wants to accomplish. And you see that in her rallies. You see people just really grow attached to her, hear her, feel her. She is really, really good in building energy, and I think that'll portray, that'll work out well for the entire country when she's elected.
Yeah, but you do hear from a lot of serious people that, look, I don't like the rhetoric, I don't like the stuff he says, but I like I think he'll take the country in a better direction on the economy or whatever.
But then you ask them
I
for
like
the
his
details.
policies.
You ask them for the details. There are none. And that's one of the reasons I'm a surrogate, because I can go into the nitty-gritty of any business topic you want to talk about. And I can tell you the difference between Kamala Harris's plan and whatever evidentiary things we have from Donald Trump.
So Cuban's out there, Cheney's out there. She's got Beyonce and God knows who else. Springsteen, your pal.
Yeah.
Bottom line, we're just about out of time. But bottom line, how does this race shake out?
Look, I think it's up to Kamala Harris in the next 10 days. If she starts to really, she's got to specifically answer some of these questions on the border, in particular.
Yeah.
If she does that, John, then I think she has a chance to win this thing. If she continues to play it safe, which is I think what she's doing, then I think she might just fumble it on the 1-yard line.
All right, Chris Christie, thank you very much for being here in studio with us.
Thank you,
Appreciate
John.
that. Still ahead here on This Week Live, ABC's Steve Osunsami has the latest installment of our series, Protecting Your Vote. And I'll speak with Georgia's Secretary of State on how his state is preparing for Election Day and what comes after. We're back in 2 minutes. Now to our series on the integrity of the voting process. And today, ABC's Steve Osunsami reports on polling stations across the country that seem to be disappearing, closing down over the past decade, and the communities that impacts the most. It's the latest in our series, Protecting Your Vote.
On this, everyone here in rural East Georgia can agree that this just might be the most glorious sunset in the world, that their lake is a canvas for the skies. Where they're having trouble these days is with the upcoming election and the closing of places where they've been voting for years.
The thing about it is, why disenfranchise anybody? Why close any polls? If we should be doing things right, we would be making sure that every person had a right to vote. To God be the glory.
Reverend Denise Freeman is a Baptist preacher here who's leading a charge against the people who run elections in this deep red county. She claims that they're working harder than ever to keep black people from voting by closing voting locations.
People don't understand the hardship that they put good people in when they make stupid, unnecessary changes in policy.
And she says that here's proof. After the 2020 presidential election that the blue team won, the powers here that be closed 4 of their 7 polling precincts that are now collecting weeds and dust. And this is who closed them all.
All these news agencies, they were calling me and they would say, "Are you black?" And when I told them that I was, they were surprised.
Lavender Bolton is the director of elections in Lincoln County. And before all this, she and Reverend Freeman were old friends.
It was just no need for those many polling places. I would have a staff sitting there all day and one person come to vote.
Were people approaching you in the street?
They were all just really mad because, oh, you just don't want black people to vote.
And this is coming from black folks?
Yes.
Okay. Did this hurt you?
It did. Yep.
The struggle here is the same fight over voting places across the country. And depending on who you ask, the reasons for closing them are justifiable or cruel, financial or political.
Jurisdictions have a lot of reasons, and often they come down to money and efficiency, absolutely. But it's also true that when, these decisions get made, we don't often get an explanation for why.
And at our local stations across America, reports are pouring in from voters having a harder time getting to new voting places.
And for the people who live in the far corners of the city, how are they going to get there? We don't have buses.
Our ABC News and OWN Stations data team found that more than 20% of American polling places closed between 2010 and 2022, and that the reasons weren't necessarily about color, but the impacts sometimes were.
In Missouri, for example, some of the most diverse counties in the state, like St. Louis, have seen the largest declines. In Ohio, the counties with the largest declines in polling places are among the poorest counties.
We found that the closings of American polling places sped up in 2013 after the U.S. Supreme Court knocked down key parts of the Voting Rights Act, a law born from the civil rights struggle. When the law changed, counties that used to need approval from federal civil rights offices to close a polling place started closing them when they wanted.
There were 4 voting machines all placed on this wall.
One of those counties was Warren, Georgia, where Wanda Jenkins used to vote at this fire station near her home. She now has to drive 12 miles.
When you feel very strongly that this was done on purpose.
Yes.
To stop black folks from voting.
Yes.
Lavender Bolton in Lincoln County still says that if it was up to just her, she would close 2 more polls, leaving the county with just 1, which she says is enough. And she says that no one is pressuring her to do this.
Let me just put it this way. You have people questioning your blackness.
Yes. I would never try to stop black people from voting. I would never try to stop anybody.
Our thanks to Steve Osensami for that excellent report. I'm joined now by Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Secretary Raffensperger, great to see you again. How are you?
Good afternoon.
You've been through this. You've been through it. We've talked about it. Election day is already there in Georgia. Walk me through the mechanics of what's going to happen over the next 11 days.
Well, if it continues like it has so far, we're going to continue to have record turnout. We're actually over 2.5 million. We're almost at 2,550,000 right now as we speak. We have 2.4 million people that have voted early in person, and then we have 150,000 people that have already had their absentee ballots accepted. It's record turnout, and we see no reason why we're going to see a decrease. Voters are engaged on both sides of the aisle.
And when you start counting the votes on November 5th, you were pretty quick, as I recall. Now, the results were so damn close, of course. I think it was roughly 11,000 something votes separating the two in 2020. How quickly do you think we're going to see results in the state of Georgia?
Well, this year we'll actually be a little bit faster. One thing is we've just passed this year SB 189, which requires all this early voting to be reported no later than 8 p.m., 1 hour after the polls close. And that'll probably be 65% of all the vote totals. And then all the absentee ballots that have been received and accepted up until that Saturday have to be tabulated and reported no later than 8 p.m. That's another, say, 5%. That's 70% of all the vote totals. Then during the evening, now the counties are going to be doing continual updates as they shut down their precincts and do their tabulations and do their reconciliations and report to the county. And so before the end of the night, we expect to have all those results in. And that we think is just tremendous responsiveness, and we think tremendous efficiency.
Now, you're a Republican, obviously a lifelong Republican, but you also, I know, because I know you well, you have taken very seriously your responsibility in a nonpartisan way to run this election in Georgia. I want to ask you, I know you did an exhaustive review of, 8 million registered votes or so in Georgia to see how many ineligible non-citizens, because there's all this talk that non-citizens are going to be voting in our election. What did you find when you scoured Georgia's voting rolls?
We just completed our second audit. Our first audit about 20 months ago, we identified 1,632 people that were apparently non-citizens. They were not from the voter list. This time we went through, we found 20 people that we could unequivocally identified that they were non-citizens and they had been removed from the rolls. And we have actually reported that and sent that case files all to local prosecuting attorneys.
Can I underline that, because this is very important? 8 million registered voters, you found 20
Correct.
Non-citizens.
And then we have
That's hardly
yeah. Then we have 156 that we could not ascertain their citizenship status. And so now we have a case files on that. And it's really not just doing one-on-one personal contacts with them to see if they've been naturalized, and so we'll get that information. And that way we'll know exactly what their status is.
So you have no doubt this election will have integrity. There will ultimately This will be an election of Georgians, citizens, people who are eligible to vote.
And that's why we've done 2 audits in the last 2 years. I did our first audit long before people were talking about this. I want to be able to tell my fellow Georgians, this is who's voting, this is not voting, so they know that only American citizens are voting in our elections. And we want to make sure that they understand we have clean voter lists, because we continually check it during the periods that we can.
And we're really out of time, but just very quickly, the other thing, Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that there are voting machines flipping votes. Another thing, not happening, right?
No, not happening. Out of the 2.5 million people, we've heard that about 1, but that didn't happen either. And so it's just not supported by the facts. And every once in a while you hear this thing, but no, we've checked it out and not true.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking more between now and November 5th and probably afterwards. Thank you, Brad Raffensperger.
We'll be here.
All right. Still ahead on This Week Live, Rachel Scott on the battle over Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that blue wall. And I'll speak to Michigan's Secretary of State as her state gets ready for Election Day. All right, we're back with This Week Live, and I am joined right here in the studio by my colleague, the great warrior, road trip warrior. You've been all over the country. I can't speak, so I can't imagine you. No sleep, covering it all, covering Trump and so much more. Rachel, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Nice to be in studio.
Yeah, no, it's
what
great.
These look like.
It's great. So it looks like there's going to be a hell of a lot going on in Michigan, in the blue wall states. We're going to be talking to Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State in Michigan. What's your sense? How much of a battle is that state right now, the state of Michigan?
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at how Donald Trump won Michigan back in 2016. He was the first Republican to win that state in about 25 years or so, and he did it by flipping 12 of the counties that former President Barack Obama won back in 2012. So you have certain areas like Saginaw, for instance, where the former president has been to multiple times, a county that voted for Obama, then flipped to Trump, then flipped to President Biden. He's been making multiple trips there. He's also been trying to chip away at some of the Arab American vote. He knows that there are deep frustrations with Vice President Kamala Harris on that issue and the Biden administration's handling, particularly of the war in Israel. And so he's really been trying to seize on that. He was endorsed by a mayor just out of Detroit, and also trying to peel away at some of that black vote as well, really trying to appeal to black male voters in the critical state of Michigan, and also, obviously around those critical popular suburbs.
It's a fascinating thing to both be saying I was the most pro-Israel president ever, most pro-Israel person since Moses, and yet I want to appeal to those that are upset that Kamala Harris is too pro-Israel.
Yeah.
What's it been like this week? I mean, John Kelly coming out and saying what he has said about Trump. How concerned are they about this stuff? Is it just roll off them?
In some ways, John, and you know this, talking to the campaign and advisors and allies of the former president, they just see it as yet one other thing, right? And their sort of, I think, prerogative this week has been to push forward as planned, to continue just to blast and deny, say it's all a distraction, and try and focus on things that rile up their base. What I have found fascinating, John, is as I have made my way across the country, I've been stopping at almost every polling location that we can find. And yes, I have met some voters that have been turned off by the rhetoric of former President Donald Trump. But they always come back to this question of, did I feel better 4 years ago than I do now? And even if they have those same level of concerns about maybe the future of democracy, whether or not there's any guardrails, they do feel like they had a better sense of their pocketbooks. They felt like he was better on the issues. But at the same time, I've definitely met voters as well that have said, no, you know what he did on January 6th, what John Kelly's saying, what all these people are saying is really turning me away from him. So I think that's what we are seeing too, and that's obviously also being reflective in the polls. John, one other thing that I'm just fascinated with and watching is just how much many of these Senate candidates are putting distance between Vice President Kamala Harris or former President Donald Trump, even, for instance, and all these critical Senate races, even just across the country. I've been watching all the debates.
It's wild, isn't it?
And it's interesting to see who mentions Vice President Kamala Harris and who doesn't.
Fascinating. All right, Rachel Scott, I could talk to you for the rest of the show, but we've got to move on. We'll talk to you again soon. You're doing awesome work out there. Thank you. All right, I am joined now by Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Secretary Benson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what are you worried about as you approach Election Day? Michigan, as I understand it, the entire state will be able to vote starting tomorrow, right? You already have some early vote, but the entire state will be voting. What any concerns?
Well, yeah, I mean, first I'll say we're seeing enormous enthusiasm from citizens all around the state. Beginning a few weeks ago, voters could start voting from home, requesting their ballots, filling them out at home and sending them back. And already from that alone, we've seen 1.4 million citizens, that's 20% of our voting age registered voters, participating that way already with their ballots in. Another million have requested their ballots. And then in just a few communities that have been doing in-person voting already, we've seen 10,000 people vote in just a few days, and that'll skyrocket tomorrow. So really what I'm seeing, I was just up in Flint and Saginaw earlier today, is enormous enthusiasm and energy, really from both sides of the aisle. The other thing we're seeing is a lot of women voting. 56% of those who cast ballots so far are women. So all that to say, enthusiasm is high. What I'm concerned about is misinformation that can dampen voters' confidence in the elections and dampen that enthusiasm, which is clearly a political strategy, but we've also seen an uptick in just misinformation and seeds of doubt being planted about the integrity of our elections that we have to keep swatting down almost hourly to help keep people having faith, rightly placed faith, in our secure election processes.
And that misinformation is not just coming from the far dark corners of the internet. I mean, Elon Musk recently said that there are more registered voters in Michigan than there are eligible adult citizens in Michigan. You corrected him on this. Right? I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds like clearly something's going on. But you've had a back and forth. He's still insisting that that's the case. Can you give us the truth on this?
Yeah, so it's misleading to say that there are more active registered voters in our state than there are people. Although I can understand how people can look at the numbers and allow fuzzy math to draw that conclusion. Here's the facts. There are 7.2 million active registered voters in our state, and there's a voting age population of 7.9 million, according to the latest U.S. Census. So there you go, less active registered voters than there are people. What gets confusing is that we have a number of inactive records. This is people who we've received information that they may have moved, but we can't, under federal law, remove them from our voter registration lists until 2 federal cycles have passed without them voting in Michigan. And so what we do is create an inactive file of folks who are inactive voters who don't get ballots sent out to them, for example. They really couldn't vote unless they showed up in person with an ID verifying that they are an eligible Michigan voter. And so that has created some confusion about how who's registered to vote and who isn't. But the bottom line is in Michigan, 7.2 million active registered voters who are engaged in voting and 7.9 million voting age population citizens overall.
Now, one of the things in 2020 on election night that really started some of the conspiracy stuff going with Republicans and with Donald Trump himself is the fact that it took a while for the vote to come in Michigan, particularly in Detroit. He talked about the late dumps in the middle of the night. What can you tell us this time? How is the vote counting going to go, and when are we going to see real results in Michigan?
So in 2020, our unofficial results, every ballot was counted within 24 hours of the polls closing. And that was with record number of people voting from home, which means those ballots are sent in, often in the last 2 days of the election cycle. And election workers have to secure them, verify their identity, and go through a whole process and then tabulate them. That takes time. And that's why it took a full day after the polls closing for our unofficial results to be filed and publicly available. This year, that pre-processing of absentee ballots, as it's called, has already started. So we're anticipating that we'll see results sooner. I talked to the Flint clerk today. She said she anticipates being done with all ballots by midnight on Tuesday, November 5th. So it will take some time. All of our clerks are going to prioritize accuracy and security over speed. But at the same time, we know that the eyes of the nation may be on Michigan, and we will be ready to get those unofficial results as soon as possible. And we're looking sometime between 8 p.m. on Tuesday and 8 p.m. on Wednesday the next day. In that 24-hour period, that's when you see the unofficial results from Michigan come out.
And of course, delay is what fuels some of that misinformation as people start speculating about what's going on. All right, Jocelyn Benson, Secretary of State for Michigan, really appreciate you taking time to talk to us. I'm sure we'll talk to you before November 5th again. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, still ahead on This Week Live, a look at the most unlikely battleground state of all. I just got back from Omaha, where I spoke to the independent candidate who is shaking up the battle for control of the Senate. You're going to want to check this guy out. We'll be right back. Now to an unlikely battleground in the 2024 election, Nebraska. The independent candidate for Senate there, Dan Osborne, has surprised the political world by giving GOP incumbent Senator Deb Fischer a real challenge, a challenge nobody saw coming. Such a surprise and such a concern to Republicans now that Donald Trump recently appeared in an ad opposing Osborne. Take a look.
His name is Dan Osborne, and he's a radical left person, a Bernie Sanders type Democrat, but we want somebody that's going to be strong, powerful, and great for our country, and it's not going to be Dan Osborne.
All right, Republicans are spending millions of dollars they did not plan to spend to oppose Osborne. He is a Navy veteran, a mechanic, a first-time candidate whose campaign has taken off in part because of ads like this.
DC's Trojan horse? I don't even own a suit. I've been a registered independent my whole entire life. This is why normal people don't run for office. This is why people hate politics. This makes you want to cut your TV in half.
So I traveled to Omaha to talk to the independent candidate no one saw coming. He says that he will not caucus with either party, so I asked him exactly how that would work.
But the big issue is you could decide who controls the Senate. I mean, will you still just move your desk in the middle of the aisle, or will you see what
I think that's where I need to navigate. I need to navigate down the middle, because that's what the two-party doom loop means. It means we're so far apart, and politics is so polarized.
But even by not deciding, again, if you win and the Senate's evenly divided, you will have decided, because if you're in the middle or you're going one side or the other, again, any one of those three decisions could determine who's in charge.
Sure. Unless you can bounce back and forth between issues. I've read this book quite a bit, and I've never
seen the Constitution. Okay.
I've never seen anything in there, and I've never seen anywhere written that says you have to do these things. I want to challenge the system, because the system needs to be challenged.
And he does not want to be placed in a box. In fact, Osborne refused the endorsement of the Democratic Party in Nebraska. He thinks he can really shake things up, perhaps start a movement. Take a listen to this.
I've heard you suggest this could be a movement if you win. And I assume you mean a national movement.
Yeah, a national movement. You know, I think what it's going to do, if Nebraska does the right thing and elects a mechanic to the halls of power, first of all, the rest of the country is going to say, holy crap, did you see what Nebraska did? They're going to be talking about it. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell people who are nurses, teachers, plumbers, carpenters, bus drivers, truck drivers, other mechanics. I don't want to leave anybody out. But it's going to tell them that you don't have to be a self-funding crypto billionaire to run for office. And we're creating the framework and the blueprint to be able to help them out, too. As long as they share the same values and campaign finance reform, ending Citizens United, getting the dark money out of politics. Deb Fischer spent $10 million in the last month trying to badmouth my name. And I think in the next 12 days there's going to be another $10 million coming. This is our national politics right now.
All right, you can see more of my full conversation. It was an interesting one with Dan Osborne Sunday on This Week. Coming up, former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus joins me on the state of the Trump campaign. We're back in 2 minutes. All right, let's bring in former RNC chair and former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. Reince, thank you for joining us. I'm hoping you can give us the state of the Trump campaign on a week where his former chief of staff came out and called him a fascist, and along many other things. I mean, this is not usually the stuff you see in the final stretch. What's the reaction with President Trump, the real reaction?
Yeah, I think the real reaction, I don't really care that much. I mean, I'm sure the president, you know, he's perturbed by it. Obviously, he Truth Socialed about it the other day. But I think the reality is that there's not a whole lot going wrong right now in the Trump campaign. I mean, that is really the core of what is happening. I mean, they really do feel good about where they're at on the early vote, absentee ballot voting, through all their data folks that look at it. They feel good about where the momentum is on the polling. They love the fact that they're reading articles every day about how the Democrats are melting down and can't believe that this is even a jump ball, if it's even a jump ball. So I think the mood of the campaign is great, and talking to the folks on the ground and people at the RNC, they feel very, very good about where they're at.
I talked to Trump just a few days ago, and I got that same impression directly from him. He clearly is very confident about where things are. You can tell because he asks you, you know, how do you think it's look? What are you seeing? Because he knows the answer. Yeah, what do you think? He knows the answer he's going to get back.
Right.
But he also, you know, there's a superstition I think that he has, and he doesn't believe it yet. What are they most worried about? How could, I mean, if he has a lead, and that's a big if, we don't really, let's face it, we don't know. But what could derail it for him in the last 11 days?
Well, look, I mean, what could derail it is, like, you know, is your analysis on this early vote, absentee ballot voting as good as you think it is? I mean, you're confident, but do you really? Is this a matter of just more people going to the polls because they're used to this early voting, or is it because you're turning out the right people? I mean, when you peel it back, though, Jonathan, the reality is I've met with folks the highest level at the party and the data folks, and when they look at states like North Carolina, they're looking at this early vote, and they're showing that more than 15% of everyone voting early in North Carolina, they didn't vote in 2020. So this isn't a matter of people that always voting or just early vote people voting again. They've got statistics, and they're looking at early, you know, they're looking at the actual data from the Secretary of State's office, the voter rolls, and they can see, as a matter of fact, that 15% of these people coming in didn't vote in 2020. And it's a much better situation for them than it was in 2020. And it's a little bit better than where we were in 2016, and we won in 2016.
So can I ask you, I want to get back to John Kelly, because it is, I mean, you are the guy that Kelly replaced. I mean, you were the chief of staff. Kelly was the next chief of staff. You spent a lot of time up close in the Oval Office with Trump, just like John Kelly did. There was one thing that struck me beyond the talk of Trump praising Hitler and, you know, saying American heroes were suckers and losers and the fascist thing. He said something else. He said Donald Trump is a guy that has absolutely no empathy. He has no empathy. Does that ring? I mean, because that's also something we've heard Kamala Harris actually try to make the case against Trump. What do you think? Is he a guy with no empathy?
You know, I don't know about that. I mean, I did not experience that, John. I mean, I think this is a president, this is a guy who has an enormous amount of energy. He wants everything done yesterday. He is a very driven, you know, he got like 3 things he wants to get done. He's on you 24/7 to get it done. And so he really doesn't care about, you know, some of the things, like, you know, how you might feel about it, or, you know, whether you think you're having a bad day or not. He wants to make sure that it's getting done. So I'm not sure why John felt that. I never heard anything like the stuff about Nazis. I really, I mean, I've heard a lot of stuff from the president, but I'd never heard the kinds of things that John described about fascism, or the fact that, you know, he was in love with generals from Germany. I never heard that kind of stuff, ever.
Well, at some point, we're out of time now, but I'd like to hear about all that other stuff that you heard from Donald Trump.
Yes.
All right, Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us. Really appreciate that.
More to come, John.
All right, man, more to come. We'll be right back with a look ahead to Sunday.